The next time you see something like that, just bypass it. I swear to you, and 9 times out of 10, the vocal will just sound better without it. I promise you. Yeah, I think the days are over when you can only know one DAW, because we're gonna be sitting here knowing 7 DAWs, and you're gonna be sitting there like, Pro Tools, or like, Ableton is the only thing that works for me. You gotta stay flexible. We were doing songs the other day that I was mixing in BandLab, okay?
Yeah, that's a ransom.
I've mixed an entire album recently. I mixed a whole album in Reason.
You can unscrew the screws on the Subtract.
You gotta be ready to just, well, I guess I'm gonna learn Reason this weekend.
Jeff Ellis is one of today's top mix engineers who's worked with artists like Frank Ocean, Joji, and Doja Cat. In today's video, I took a never-before-seen look behind Jeff Ellis' mix process and a full tour of his amazing studio. In this video, I will unearth some of the tips, tricks, and techniques Jeff uses to mix for artists at the highest level. Jeff's studio is based in the famous East West Studios, where almost every major artist has worked at some point, but it's also where Jeff got his start as an intern.
2010. Do you see that all the way up at the top? That dates back to where I used to be an intern at the studio. So this is where I got my start.
Moving into Jeff's studio, we come across the B room, where his assistants work to prep the mixes.
This is Trevor, one of my wonderful assistants.
It's also home to his highly territorial studio dog, Murphy.
And this is Murphy, the studio dog, 14 weeks old in training. Murphy. Hey. Are you being assaulted right now?
Stop me. Hey.
Take the dog away.
Before we get into Jeff's mixing process, let's take a look at some of the cool things that decorate his studio.
The lock of Y2K. These are the stats that it gives you. This is a cool thing for the Gex album we just did. Freeze is my favorite drummer in the world. The best part is it says Josh Freeze, and then the phone number just says unlisted. Someone put this Jeff Sucks Here thing like 10 years ago. It's still there. This is Candace Stewart, the studio manager. This is Omos Keith, the famous producer. We had a no-show. The engineer was a no-show one day, and Omos was like, yo, Jeff can do it. And I jumped in for that day, and then I ended up working with Frank for like 5 years after that. So mugs on sale online, link in bio.
First, let's take a look at Jeff's mix prep process. When receiving files, Jeff has certain criteria that allows him to fully realize the vision of the producer. When Jeff is receiving files to mix, he prefers to get the original session that the producer worked out of.
I don't like getting stems when I mix a song. If you get completely dry stems, the production has moved way too far backwards. What I like to do is get a DAW session. I have a couple great assistants who will make sure that I can load up the producer's DAW session or the artist's DAW session. It's like a Logic session here. And we'll be like, what's on the stereo bus that's really important that we need to preserve? What's going on in the vocal effects? Maybe sometimes you can make the reverb way better just by doing a different pre-delay or something like that. I look at mixing as like remodeling a house, right? When you're gonna remodel a house, you don't want to get rid of any parts of the old house that are really amazing. Like an old house might have incredible tile on the floor, but the bathroom fixtures are lame and need to be replaced.
After all the files are prepped, Jeff moves into his main mix room, which is decorated with various items of importance.
I don't know what this moisturizer is for. That's probably Trevor's. The one Grammy that I got 1,000 years ago lives here. A lot of people are taking shots out of it. Should George T Music take a shot out of a Grammy? Some cool like Pokemon cards for various projects that I've worked on. We got Nicki, we got Doja Cat. This is some Frank Ocean stuff.
When Jeff is mixing, he has 2 individual stages that activate different parts of the brain. To begin a mix, he has a static mix phase, where he sits at the mouse and keyboard and really has time to dial in advanced plugins and effects.
My mixing flow is kind of like work up to a static pass over here, doing a lot of kind of plug-in traditional mixing with mouse and keyboard, and get everything to like, okay, it's a pretty good level. My reverbs are kind of where they want to be. The effects are pretty good.
In his second mix phase, we'll return to his Avid S4 to do balances and automation, performing like an orchestra conductor.
And then at that point, then I'll just, put my cursor in the bottom right-hand corner of my screen. The screensaver will come on, and now for the rest of the mix, there's like no more computer screen. If you're using a mouse and a keyboard for all of your mixing, you're really leaving a lot on the table. And when you start mixing in the way that they used to in the past, it becomes such a more emotional way of working, an artful way of mixing. But you can get your entire mix down to just a few faders and put everything in trim automation mode. And now you're just performing out your mix. You're working like you're a conductor as opposed to just kind of like a technician nerd on your mouse and keyboard. If you moved into this approach for at least like one phase of your mix, the final phase where you're automating out your song, you'll realize all of a sudden, wow, this is so much fun. And everything just got much more immersive. It's called VCA bus. This is where it brings all my songs VCAs down to like drums, percussion, bass. Green means sound effects to me, synths, lead vocals, background vocals, vocal effects returns. And this is the effects returns for the other elements in the song. And then I have like an all drum, all bass, all music bus. But what makes that so nice is you can just quickly be like listening down to the song and just like writing the drums, okay? And when you're working in trim automation mode, all the automation always goes back down to 0. So you're not worrying about trampling over automation that you've already done in other passes. You're just kind of adding and subtracting.
For mixing, proper monitoring is crucial. Jeff does most of his work on an affordable pair of Cali speakers.
For like the last 6 months or so, I've been using these Cali Audio speakers to mix. These are Cali Audio IN5s. Over here, these are Cali Audio IN8s. I'm obsessed with these monitors. They are not expensive. You can do the best mixing in the world on not expensive speakers, and I'm doing it. So I do have some PMC MB3s here. These are expensive, and I kind of use these to when I need to be loud and just fill the room. Most of my critical mixing is done very quiet. I have a special volume that I mix at.
But the amount of awesome gear doesn't stop with the S4. Because Jeff is at East West, he has access to real plate reverbs and real echo chambers.
Like I use Dante to get from my room to the echo chambers. There's just like Fairchild just hanging out right here, just chilling, you know? I'm always using real plate reverbs, real echo chambers. EMT plates. Number 4 is the one that's my magical wood. Don't come to East West thinking that you're gonna use plate 4. I mixed a big song last year called Glimpse of Us by Joji, and that's the reverb I use on it. It's just this haunted analog plate reverb. Like the bigger thing is like knowing when it's the right time to use what effect. Like what would be good on like a sad ballad is like, I don't know, like this lonely, sad EMT 140 that's been living in the machine room of East West for 50 years.
Besides the plate and echo chambers, Jeff has some plugins he likes to use for effects.
I just have some like go-to effects returns, but most of this isn't being used in the song. It's just in a template.
Among some of his go-to effects are Apogee plugins, specifically Clear Mountain's Domain and Clear Mountain's Phases.
You know what's a great new plugin? I don't even want to tell you. I don't know. This is a great plugin right here. You know what's another great plugin? Made by the same company. No one's using this stuff. This plugin is insane. This is the best plugin ever. Just use the presets. Presets and this knob, that's all you need to know.
Now let's take a deeper look at Jeff's mixing process. One of the first steps of his mixing process is to know when to respect the rough mix, but also have the confidence to depart from the rough mix and do his own thing. Sometimes this is the most difficult part of mixing. It comes from years of developing your taste and skill as a mixer.
If you listen to a rough mix and it's like, damn, this is amazing. I feel so magical after listening to that song. Your first thought should be, hey, where's this magic coming from? And how am I not gonna ruin that? It's very common for a mixer to hear a magical rough mix and just go straight to EQing the kick drum for no reason. If you hear or feel magic listening to a rough mix, you need to do everything in your power to preserve that magic, okay? And if you can add more magic to it, or even find a way to pull more out of it, that's what the job is.
And one crucial part of respecting the original rough mix and demo is to keep the original mix bus intact in some scenarios.
That's why we're always trying to get people's DAW sessions, especially if the song already sounds great, because if you start changing the mix bus that they had, a lot of times the pocket in the drums falls away. The bass elements, or like the 808s reacting with the maximizer or limiter that they use, starts to go away. Give yourself the freedom to just do whatever you want. There's no, if anybody's like, always start with the mix bus in, or like always start with the mix bus out, it's just like they're already fucking up. If you're doing a lot of the same genre every day, the same type of songs, maybe you can rely more on formulas like that, but we're doing different genres all the time. How are we gonna just rely on some particular chain or premise that we've used in the past?
While Jeff has no particular chain, there are a few plugins he relies on for his mix bus from time to time.
This is a pretty good plugin. Okay, it's just like, this is like as little compression as you can, as possible. You know what I mean? This is like barely doing anything, but a lot of times it makes a difference, you know? Ozone 10, amazing. Ozone 10. There's no like special like setting to harvest here with what I'm doing. It's just like, is what sounded good in the song, you know what I mean? I just like to have a LUFS meter on my stereo bus, you know? You wanna know if you're beating the rough mix when things are normalized for volume. Don't be the mixer that is like, oh, it's louder now, you know what I mean? You have to be thinking about emotion, and the more things get compressed, it's like an inverse relationship with emotion. And sometimes things being compressed and messed up is the aesthetic, so you just have to go there, you know? You know the phrase, read the room? Just apply that to the song. Like, is this a song that should be smushed? You know, you'll get a lot of like people that are great at mixing hip hop and rap, and then they'll get some random ballad and just massacre it the same way they would have done a rap song.
And when Jeff goes to start mixing the song, the same idea stays in place of respecting the producer's vision and leaving some of the plugins and chains that they had in place.
This idea that I'm gonna clear this all out and do some magic Jeff Ellis vocal chain is pure madness. They work this aesthetic into the song, and a lot of times this is the aesthetic that matches the production. And a lot of times the engineer will have spent an enormous amount of time with the artist dialing this aesthetic for their voice in, right? So I can't remember how much I changed or didn't change, but like, for example, this is a finished mix. I don't know what this plugin is. I don't use this, but it was on the vocal, right? So I would have gone through, bypassed it, saw what it was like, oh, that's nice, I'll leave it on there. I remember Fairchild, I remember the engineer had it at 3, I moved this to 1, and all of a sudden some more emotion came out of it. At the end of the day, like, so much of this is just about levels and balance, right? This is so not sophisticated. Like, if you ever see this, if you're working and you see something like this, and like the next time you see something like that, just bypass it. I swear to you, and 9 times out of 10, the vocal will just sound better without it. I promise you. My EQs look like this. A little less whatever this was, right? Or it'll look like this. I almost always just use the most basic EQ. I'll be like, the vocal's a little dull, okay? It's not dull anymore. You'll see people like learning how to mix vocals off of a synth pop tutorial on YouTube, and they'll just apply this. You gotta abandon all of that. When you're thinking about EQing a vocal or whatever, think about the arrangement of the song, right? It's like a big ballad where there's a lot of open space. Think about how much of that chest resonance can I keep the vocal, because a lot of times that's where all the emotion is coming from.
Once Jeff is done with the mix, he'll move on to his Atmos mixing process.
This is the Atmos setup. If you're using Pro Tools to mix Atmos, I would highly recommend giving Logic a shot. When I first started doing Atmos, the integration with Pro Tools is so bad. Everybody was trying to sell me all this gear. They're like, you need this separate rig and you need all this. I'm like, no, you can't use Logic. That's not a professional way to deliver Atmos mixes. Logic and Atmos is integrated. It's so easy. Throw on, you can just literally be doing your Atmos mix on the speaker and just put on Apple headphones, and now all of a sudden you're in the binaural render. It's just like so much easier. So we have a Kali audio system in here, and it's been phenomenal for us. It's not going to break the bank, and it's going to sound amazing.
I hope you enjoyed that video taking a look at Jeff Ellis's mixing setup and studio. If you did enjoy the video, please don't forget to like and subscribe, as it really helps out the channel. Anyways, I'll see you all in the next video.